Welcome to Vero Update. It's all about humanity. Happy viewing.
The Lagos State Government Guidelines for Ease of Lockdown in the state. Here are the guidelines as released by the state government. Statewide curfew. 1. An overnight curfew will be in force from 8 p.m. till 6 a.m. daily, from May 4, 2020, for 2 weeks in the first instance. Subsequent extension of the curfew will be communicated by way of a press release issued by the state government. 2. The state will continue to decontaminate all public places and infrastructure. These places include, but are not limited to, the State Secretariat, government establishments, markets, schools, motor parks and bus stops. 3. All businesses are also hereby directed to decontaminate their premises prior to reopening. Interstate movement. All movement in or out of Lagos State is prohibited except for supply chain and services, such as goods, agro-products, petroleum products, relief items, supplies, construction supplies and registered courier services with a limited capacity of accompanying personnel of no more than 7 persons. Face masks. 1. Movement in public spaces without a face mask or face covering is highly prohibited. Everyone appearing in public must use a simple face mask. Violation of this directive will attract heavy penalties. Public service. 2. All public servants in the entire Lagos State Unified Public Service, on grade levels 1 to 14 are to continue to remain and work from home, unless otherwise directed by their accounting officers. 3. For grade levels 15 and above, accounting officers to carry out a needs assessment of critical staff, identify essential officers and draw up a flexible work roster in compliance with social distancing principles. 4. All staff of the local government and local council development area offices in the state are expected to remain at home at this time, as all LGA, LCDA offices will remain shut till further notice. Note: none of these directives apply to essential service providers. These people are expected to continue working as frontline workers, whose services are deeply appreciated. Open markets. 1. Effective from Monday 4th of May 2020, all open markets and stores will be allowed to operate on alternate days between the hours of 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 2. Everyone attending these markets and stores are mandated to observe necessary precautionary measures of social distancing and very high levels of personal and hand hygiene. 3. Markets and stores selling food items and other wares would operate on alternate days across the state, in the following manner: all markets and stores selling other wares, Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. 4. Markets and stores selling food items, including abattoirs, Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays. 5. There must be adequate provision of alcohol-based sanitizers and hand-washing facilities at all entry points into the markets and stores. 6. Social distancing must be strictly adhered to and temperature checks must be carried out periodically. 7. There will be zero tolerance for street trading. 8. The Iyaloja General and other market leaders also will ensure that their members abide by all the stated guidelines and advisories. 9. The Ministry of Local Government and Community Affairs, Chairman of LCD's Office of Iyaloja General and enforcement agencies will ensure strict compliance. Malls, stores. 1. Malls and stores will be allowed to open with the proviso that stores and malls will maintain a 60% occupancy capacity within their premises, while also ensuring that a 2-meter (6 feet) social distancing is maintained between every person and the next. 2. To maintain a 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. operational schedule. 3. Mandatory use of face masks, coverings within the stores. 4. Temperature checks and hand sanitizing protocols should be strictly adhered to at all entry points into the premises. Eateries and restaurants. 1. Eateries and restaurants will be allowed to open daily between the hours of 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. However, these establishments are not to open to the public for in-dining services. Only takeout and delivery services are permitted. 2. All food handlers and staff of these eateries and restaurants are expected to have gone through exhaustive health checks and must also practice high levels of personal and hand hygiene in serving members of the public. 3. Food handlers are also mandated to wear masks and gloves at all times, particularly during the preparation and serving of the food. 4. Temperature checks and hand sanitizing protocols should be strictly adhered to at all entry points into the premises. Healthcare. All medical establishments will continue to open and maintain a high index of suspicion for COVID-19. All suspected cases of COVID-19 must be immediately reported to the state helpline 0800-2676662. Screening and notification requirements. All residents shall continue to comply with the screening requirements of the Lagos State Ministry of Health officials on active case search duty within the communities. Residents are enjoined to provide accurate answers to questions about their health, including medical and travel history, and information about other individuals with whom they may have had contact, and produce any document which may assist the health officers in assessing such a person's health. Schools and academic institutions. 1. All schools at primary, secondary and tertiary levels remain physically closed. 2. Students are expected to continue learning on the alternative online and media channels announced by the various institutions of learning. 3. Private school proprietors and parents, guardians are encouraged to enter into meaningful dialogue regarding the delivery of education through various online and digital channels, and very importantly, the cost implication of same. Places of worship. All places of worship, both formal and informal, are to remain closed from any form of congregational services or assemblage, until further notice. Road transportation, commuter operations. 1. Commercial, commuter operations within the state shall be between the hours of 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. 2. All commuters are mandated to wear face masks at all times, sanitize with alcohol-based sanitizer or wash their hands with soap and running water before and after each trip. 3. All operators i.e. drivers and conductors are mandated to always face masks and hand gloves while in transit and dispose of same appropriately. 4. All transport operators, companies are expected to disinfect their vehicles, parks and garages regularly and continuously, for vehicle, at least before and after each trip. 5. All transport operators, companies are expected to have at the entrance of the respective parks washing hand equipment with running water, and deploy temperature readers to test each passenger before boarding. 6. All operators are expected to have alcohol-based sanitizers in the vehicles for drivers, conductors and passengers. 7. All motor parks and garages must not be overcrowded with passengers and commercial activities at any point in time. 8. Social distancing is required for passengers queuing to board buses. 9. Operators are not allowed to overload their vehicles at this point in time. All buses must operate at a capped limit of 60% of the vehicle installed capacity, i.e. for buses, 1 passenger with driver in front seat, 2 passengers on the back rows. 10. All BRT and LBSL buses, high capacity, must not carry more than 21 passengers and no standing shall be allowed in all BRT and LBSL bus operations. 11. All air conditioning systems in public transport systems must be switched off. 12. All commercial motorcycle operations within the state is hereby suspended. 13. Tricycles (kegs) operating in unrestricted areas must not carry more than 2 passengers per trip and must ensure appropriate social distancing is maintained between passengers. Water transport operations. 1. From May 4, 2020, water transport operations will be restricted to the period between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. daily, until further notice. 2. Passengers, operators are mandated, in addition to life jackets, to wear face masks at all times, sanitize with alcohol-based sanitizers or wash their hands with soap and running water before and after each trip. 3. All boat ferry operators, companies are expected to disinfect their boats, ferries and terminal regularly and continuously, for boats, ferries at least before and after each trip, in collaboration, supervision of the Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources and Ministry of Transportation in order to ensure standards and safety of the disinfectant being used. 4. All boat ferry operators, companies are expected to have at the entrance of their respective terminals hand-washing equipment with running water and alcohol-based sanitizers. 5. All boat ferry operators are expected to have alcohol-based sanitizers in their boat, ferry for operators and passengers. 6. Terminals must not be overcrowded with passengers and commercial activities at any point in time. Social distancing is required for passengers queuing to board boat, ferry. 7. Social distancing principles must be strictly adhered to with at least 2 meters, 6 feet, distance between people on the boat, ferries. 8. Operators are not allowed to overload their boats, ferries at this point in time. All public boats, ferries should operate at 60% of the installed capacity. 9. Operators must have temperature readers to test each passenger before boarding the boat, ferry. Truck and logistics transport operations. 1. Trucks transporting foods and other raw materials into the state must comply with the following guidelines, or all passengers on board the vehicle must always use face masks, coverings and have available within the vehicle alcohol-based hand sanitizer. 2. All vehicles carrying food and other agricultural produce in and out of Lagos must not have more than 7 passengers on board. 3. Vehicles used for the transportation of food items and other services must be decontaminated before gaining access through the state's border and when leaving. 4. The Ministry of Agriculture in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment and Water Resources and other relevant stakeholders will strictly monitor and enforce these guidelines in order to prevent and control interstate spread of COVID-19. Maritime and port operations. All operators within the maritime and port logistics industry are to ensure that all haulage and distribution operations within the metropolis adhere strictly to the following guidelines. All truck movement to and from the ports, fuel depots and truck parks must be done in a manner that puts the safety of life and property as utmost priority. 1. The use of face masks, coverings by all passengers in the trucks. 2. Principles of social distancing to be observed by all passengers in the trucks. 3. Temperature checks and hand sanitizing protocols should be strictly adhered to at all times. Private sector businesses. With effect from May 4, 2020, private sector businesses, companies will be permitted to operate within a framework known and referred to as controlled easing phase. Offices and businesses that choose to operate shall comply with the following directives below. 1. Offices and business establishments to open between the hours of 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and are directed to operate at 60% of their staff capacity. This means that companies are encouraged to operate a flexi-shift roster system which would see staff work on a shift basis. 2. Establishments are to ensure a 2-meter distancing measure is maintained in all common areas, and at all service and customer-facing desks. 3. All buildings are to maintain a 60% occupancy limit in all office rooms within the building, and no more than 50% of the elevator capacity in any building shall be utilized. 4. Businesses must make adequate arrangements for the transportation of their staff to their places of work to reduce risk of contagion and exposure while traveling on public transportation. In the event that businesses are unable to make such adequate arrangements, they must allow such staff to continue to work remotely from home. 5. Businesses must ensure that all staff members wear face masks while at work and in transit to work. 6. Where companies choose to make private travel arrangements for their staff into work, such companies must ensure that principles of social distancing, hand and personal hygiene, temperature checks and hand sanitizing protocols are strictly observed. 7. It is important to reiterate that the controlled easing phase is a gradual and controlled easing of the lockdown. Thus, businesses must bear in mind that they are still to try and operate, as much as is possible, remotely and away from the office. Banks and other financial institutions, we understand the important roles banks and financial institutions play in our economy, and for this reason they are highly encouraged to open their branches and offer their full complement of services to the general public, provided the following directives listed below are strictly adhered to. All banks and financial institutions are to observe the operational working hours of 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 1. Banks are to ensure a 2-meter (6 feet) distancing measure is maintained in all common areas, and at all service and customer-facing desks. 2. Ensure regular cleaning and decontamination of their various ATM machines. 3. Banks are to observe temperature checks, hand sanitizing protocols as well as the use of face masks for staff and customers. 4. Banks are to maintain a 60% occupancy limit in all office rooms within their buildings, and no more than 50% of the elevator capacity in the building shall be utilized. Manufacturing, construction companies. 1. Manufacturing and construction companies (MCCs) will be allowed to operate between the hours of 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Waivers will be provided by the Lagos state government to enable movement outside of the restricted hours, upon the condition that the MCCs shall make adequate arrangements for the transportation of staff to and from their homes to their place of work. 2. MCCs are to observe temperature checks, hand sanitizing protocols, as well as the use of face masks for all workers on site. 3. Ensure social distancing principles, as well as high levels of hand and respiratory hygiene, are strictly observed by staff. 4. As much as is possible, encourage shift-based work for all workers. Recreational, entertainment centers. 1. All entertainment centers such as event centers, movie theaters, arcades, bars, nightclubs, day clubs, beaches and casinos continue to remain closed till further notice. 2. The ban on social congregations such as parties, weddings, etc. remain in force. Parks, spas, gyms and salons. All recreational parks, including those in private and residential estates, swimming pools, gyms, sporting facilities, beauty salons, spas, and all such public places will continue to remain closed until further notice. Hotels. Hotels are prohibited from operating during this time, till further notice. However, hotels being used to accommodate medical personnel on the front line of the pandemic, and those being used as quarantine, isolation and treatment centers, are hereby wholly exempted from this directive. Any hotel, not exempted from the directive, found to be open and operational will not only be sealed, but the proprietors will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Elderly persons, 65 and above, as well as persons with underlying or pre-existing health conditions, especially hypertension, diabetes, asthma and low immunity are advised to remain at home, and request the assistance of those not in the vulnerable or elderly category to procure essential items needed. FUNERALS. 1. Funerals permitted with strict adherence to the following directives. Size of gathering should not exceed 20 people, including the officiating religious leaders. 2. Physical distancing maintained. 3. All guests to disperse to their homes after funeral ceremony, with no accompanying parties or receptions permitted. WHISTLEBLOWING. The government charges all citizens to be gatekeepers of all the directives herein contained. Whistleblowers are enjoined to immediately communicate violation of any of the directives to the following whistleblower hotlines: 0901-051-3197, 0901-051-3198 and 0901-051-3199. Whistleblowers are guaranteed full protection as their identities shall be kept strictly confidential at all times.
Please like, comment, and share our video. Above all, do subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch more videos. Thank you.